the etymology of buttered.
What is the etymology of buttered?
I don't think the Urban Dictionary goes that in depth.
Butterscotch.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 68 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast of Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam and I fling bits around the internet.
I'm Carolyn. I bop.
I bop them on the head.
I was thinking about bopping bots, but it just didn't work.
That's fine.
It's a work in progress.
And today's October 11th, 2016. Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything can happen on this show. There will be profanity, so if you're a child, go away. All right. What happened this week, you guys?
Wow, that's a big question.
It is. Well, for starters, Sam got married, and now he's gone on a honeymoon.
Sam got hitched like in a cage over a waterfall in a river.
That's true, actually.
And it was in one of those locations where you always see videos of people flipping over the railing and flying into the river. It didn't happen, though. Nobody sailed into the
Fortunately
watery
and
abyss.
unfortunately.
You didn't even throw your D&D player's handbook into the water.
No, and of course, the ceremony was happening on this elevated wooden pier thing over the water with slats in between the wood, and I was like, one of these rings is going to just fly out and land right in the crack.
I mean, and its purpose is for weddings. I mean, that's why that structure exists, yet it's designed for the maximum likelihood of fuck-ups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder how many rings have been lost to that river. How many rings have been sacrificed?
Dozens.
But it's part of their business model because then they can go in afterwards. They probably just got scuba gear, and then after any problematic weddings, they just go get the stuff. And
They just have a ring retrieval team.
Yeah, make some extra
ready.
few $1,000 off of each wedding.
Metal detector and very large magnet. That wouldn't work for gold, though.
No, but if it was a large enough magnet.
You'd get a bunch of other stuff. So
Yeah.
you can kind of
It would maybe
sell
bring
all
the
that
ring up.
and get yourself a new ring.
Yeah.
So, we also had an event this weekend called Pixel Pop Festival, which
Pixel
was
Pop.
organized by Carol and then probably some other people too. But
Yeah, I guess.
Definitely some other people,
but
too.
it was Carol. So let's hear about it. How'd it go?
Pixel Pop was really cool. It was our first year at the Science Center. And so it was really neat because we had some things that were available to just people who were at the Science Center to come in and check out and learn about science and also learn about video games. And then we also
centers.
And centers.
Yeah.
Yep.
They learned how to center a center among a game convention.
Nice.
And there were 2 packed days of talks, which was really cool. And it's always amazing to be kind of the one organizing and putting together the schedule and then see it all happen and see it all come to fruition and then have people come up afterwards and be like, that talk changed the way that I think about video games. And I'm like, yes, that's the entire point.
Yes.
So yeah, you had a really amazing talk.
I had a talk. It was called Do What You Want. The funny thing was I was looking at the schedule, and because the schedule it wasn't like it didn't say talk name and then speaker name. It just had the talk name. And my talk was called Do What You Want. And so
It looked like free time.
Yeah, you'd see all this like along the schedule, you'd see a bunch of talk names, and then there's a block of time that just says do what you want in it. And I was like, crap. Now this is gonna be anarchy. People are just gonna go do what they want instead of coming to my talk.
They're just gonna shit on the stage.
Yeah. People do that. It's weird.
It is. It was weird. As an event coordinator, it's really frustrating when people shit on the stage. But you say do what you want,
and then you get what you asked for.
Yeah. The speaker information and everything was all in the handbooks, but we realized that a little bit too late that not having the speaker name on the on the at a glance schedule was a little bit problematic.
It's not a huge sprawling event though, so it was pretty easy for people to find where they needed to go and stuff like that.
Are you going to do a post-mortem of this like you did with your card game?
A post-mortem talk?
Yeah, or article.
Possibly. I am getting together with my co-organizer, Jeremy, who runs Anime St. Louis. He does the ops and the money side of things for Pixel Pop. I'm going to probably get together with him pretty soon and break it down because we had a lot of feedback. It was our first time at this venue and mistakes were made. But it was overall a really good event.
Yeah, but I think this is it's just an important thing because you're trying to put together a new convention and that necessarily starts really small. It's already grown, but this is only year 3, right? So it's not fair to expect it to be on a positive trajectory and just like keep being successful all the time because of course you got to keep learning from stuff and as you know, obviously, but other people who want to do this kind of thing, I'm sure could benefit quite a bit.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because in the past 2 years, it's been at a university.
Yes.
Was it Webster?
Webster University, yeah.
And we've also done a lot of game jams at universities, and we've done game jams at other locations. What do you feel are sort of like the positives or negatives at doing it at a university versus at just some other location?
At the Science Center. So there were definitely there were definitely reasons why we wanted to move to the Science Center. The university was not set up for a convention setting, and so the flow was really awkward.
Yeah,
and there
you
were
had classrooms kind of separating everything.
Demos were happening. Like the expo hall was split among 3 or 4 different classrooms because there wasn't a large enough space to have
the
demos.
expo several classrooms.
Right. And it's, parking is always hard at universities. And you also make students from other universities feel a little alienated when it's on somebody's home ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's that weird
should I be
university
here?
It's like nationalism of university, alma mater nationalism. So I mean, but it was really great to have it at Webster. That's my alma mater, and they have a game design program there, and they were really supportive. But it was also too small. Ultimately, we wound up hitting a peak of about 500 by the second year, and it was just getting too crowded for people to even see all the talks they wanted to see. So we were talking to the Science Center, and it turned out to be a perfect venue as far as the size that we wanted to grow to. And it also wound up being a really great sort of tourist location because we wound up getting a lot more people coming in from out of town this year than any previous year.
Oh, that's cool.
Because, it's on Forest Park, which is this massive, beautiful free park with all kinds of free attractions in St. Louis. And there's nothing to not do.
Right.
I'm still tired from the weekend, clearly.
You had a long weekend.
There's a long weekend. But and
so it was good though.
It was really good. And the people there already knew how to run events. So we had an AV crew and we had projectors that they knew how to set up.
The stage was
AV
awesome.
Smooth and the stage was good.
Yeah.
The stage, of having being able to stand on the stage, have the giant screen behind, and then the TV in the front where you could see, what was on the screen behind you was a really nice thing.
Yeah. And there was a lot of like walk-in traffic from people who were just there to see the Science Center. We're like, oh wait, there's video games here.
What's this?
We had people reach out to us after and be like, this was the coolest thing that we accidentally found all weekend. So it was really cool. And this was our first year actually of also recording all of the talks. So we had a video crew actually volunteer. They do events on a regular basis as part of their company, and they just reached out and they wanted to help the game dev crew.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so they volunteered and recorded all the talks on the 2 main stages.
So did they get all the panels, talks, everything?
In the 2 main rooms. So there were 3 rooms, and the third one was primarily for roundtables and technical talks. So that one wasn't captured, but the other 2 rooms were. And so I think it's going to be really great to have an archive also of just to show off the quality of talks. And
when are those going to start going up?
That's a good question. I don't know yet. It's like I said, it was a volunteer crew. So it's probably whenever they get around to it. And I also have to go around and snag all the PowerPoints from the people who were on the big stage because it was so big. They weren't able to get the PowerPoints from behind them. But So, and thank you both for participating.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. How was your promoting your games panel? I had a back-to-back panel at the exact same time, so I couldn't even see it.
Yeah, I think it was good. I mean, I did my classic, nobody knows what they're doing. Don't listen to anybody. Try to collect your own information kind of a thing, which was kind of an opposition to the rest of the panel. So it was kind of funny. But Matt from Graphite Labs, who is about to launch Hive Jump. It's in early access right now. It was really interesting talking to him because they're just about to launch a game.
Yeah.
And they have their own ideas about what's going to make a game successful to launch. And we have our own ideas. But for them, they've done client work before this and where their clients handled all that part of things. And so
they've been making games for a long time.
Right.
But they haven't had to do their own PR and marketing.
And so it's going to be really fun, I think, to talk with them afterwards and do some postmortems and stuff and figure out what they thought actually worked and see who was right.
Maniacal laughter.
Yeah, no, they got a good game, so I think it's gonna.
Yeah.
I'm pretty pumped about it.
Yeah.
And we also have so coming up we're sort of on the final week. We feel like we've been in the eye of the storm of conventions and everything else for the past 6-8 weeks or something.
Yeah, it's been about 2 months.
So we're not done yet. We have
We're close.
Yeah, Adam and I are heading out in
Today.
like 2 hours to go from recording this to go to Steam Dev Days, and we're going to be there for a couple days in Seattle. And Carol's going to Indiecade at the end of this week for Pass the Buck, a game of corporate responsibility management.
That's right.
Which is her card game. And so we're all just kind of, and then Sam's on his honeymoon this week. So we're all just kind of scattered to the four winds, which also actually next week, Fat Bard, who does all of our podcast audio stuff, is going to be gone. And so, so next week we're actually doing a rerun episode, which will be a pretty cool surprise. And I think he's going to remaster the audio. He's just going to add quality to it somehow.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like in
Enhance.
CSI, exactly.
I stole your joke.
yeah, he's just going to zoom in, enhance it, and it's going to be great.
It's going to be perfect.
And then before we get to the questions, there's one other kind of interesting kind of industry news item that came up, which I think would be kind of cool to talk about, which is a pocketgamer.biz article came out, I think today, about the price of acquiring a paying mobile user.
Yeah.
And this applies to free-to-play games. So we, just for some context, we used to make free-to-play games. We made 4 games that were free with ads and in-app purchases because as we were trying to get our studio established, we kind of realized that we needed to kind of play by the rules of the market and do whatever we could to build up an audience and prove to people that we were making quality stuff. And then with Crashlands, we made a pay up front game, which once we had demonstrated that we could make a good game, then people were much more willing to feature us and players were more willing to take a gamble on, the stuff that we were making. So for us, our pay up front game has done dramatically better for us as a studio than all of our free games did. And this little new statistic that came out today probably explains a lot about
it's
why.
illuminating.
So at the beginning of this year, the average cost for a company to acquire a paying mobile user for free games was about $97.
It's
I just
incredible.
find this
So in other words, you would have to, as a company, you would have to spend $97 in advertising to acquire enough users for your game that one of them would buy something because fewer than 10% of people will ever buy anything from any game. And if you look at it on a specific game-to-game basis, the number is more like, just a few percent of the players in any given game will actually buy an in-app purchase or whatever. So it makes sense now in retrospect as to why it was so hard for us because we made these free games, we had in-app purchases in them, and we were just kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. We didn't have any kind of like maniacal, psychologically manipulating things in them. They're just like, you can just buy this stuff and there's a finite amount of things you can buy. And I think Quadrupus is our game that has the most things you can buy. And I think the most you could spend on it is like $30. Well, if it costs $97 in ads to get a new user, obviously that's not sustainable, right?
Yeah. Well, you go to GDC or something, you go to the mobile summit or you go to the monetization talks and they're just pushing whales. These people who are spending the top 1%. So they're spending thousands of dollars on free to play games at times.
And this is why, because it's not just that somebody has to pay $95. That has to be the average.
Yeah.
Right.
Has to be at least that. So it's not just that it costs $95 to
And
get a user.
It's skewed heavily toward people who spend a lot of money. Yeah.
So your game has to be designed so that the average paying player
Spends over about $100.
can spend $100.
Although that number has trended downward, so that by June of this year, according to this article, and I have no verification of their statistics.
According to a study.
So according to this article, which like all things, as Adam was saying, don't believe it, take it with a grain of salt, blah, blah, blah. But according to this, the cost is down to something like $50, $55 or something like that.
Which is still as much as you pay for a PS4 game, like a AAA
that's
PS4
a AAA title. Yeah. So, these numbers kind of bring to light a lot of the reasons why all the top mobile games are the way they are, because that's the only way to make it sustainable. If it costs that much to get somebody to play it and to spend money in it, then the game has to be rigged in such a way as to try to make people spend as much as possible.
Yeah,
and
in order to
the
stay
game.
on the top of the list, because the lists are dynamic, that means people have to continue doing that. So you have to keep on pumping advertising revenue or advertising money into these things to get those users to stay on the top. And the only way to keep doing that is if you're making more than $100 per user on average.
Yeah. So this
paying
is I don't know. It reaffirms my idea that I don't want to be making free games anymore.
Right, and it's
untenable.
it's mind-boggling that people complain about paying $1 or $2 for a quote-unquote premium game when these free games are designed literally to bleed not literally, but they're designed to bleed the money out of their players.
No, I would say literally.
Literally
Yeah.
bleed the money out of their players.
Yeah, you just open a vein and just pull the quarters out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know about all this, but it does kind of present the industry in a different light than I had sort of thought about before, which is just how sort of unsustainable this model is if you are a small developer,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, if you don't have money to dump into advertising. Well, because I mean, the other side of this whole thing is that this means that if it costs you $95 to get,
Well, now 50
Or 50.
so super
if
cheap.
it costs
now.
you a bunch, if it costs you a bunch of, even if it costs you $5 to get a paying user into your game, then that means any money that they pay you, you don't actually get until they've spent at least $5 on average, right? And so if that margin is $95 or $50 or whatever, that means that your average player has to spend more than that before you even get any of it.
Yep. But
which is
yeah,
just-
and then you also have to try to maybe offset those costs by filling your game with advertisements or something,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So other people are advertising to your players to try to get them to play their game, you
Yeah.
know? So it's just kind of this weird ecosystem of everybody just kind
And
of
in the
passing.
end, the people who are really getting money in this deal are advertisers.
Yeah.
advertisers and platform holders.
And platform
Yeah.
holders.
So
Yeah.
anyway, just kind of an interesting statistic that popped up.
Just
and,
nuts.
So let's get to some we want to do a lot of questions because last week we put out the call for questions and our people answered.
You delivered.
So good.
And we have we just have a smorgasbord, which I believe is some kind of Swedish meat plate
Yes,
I
I believe
delicious.
you're right.
of questions.
Swedish meat plate of questions. Meaty, juicy questions.
Yeah. These questions come from podcast.bscotch.net. And hopefully you all continue this trend of providing many and awesome
Yeah, we love
questions.
and we love getting questions from everybody. It's our favorite part of the podcast, actually.
Yeah.
We pull up the questions on podcast.bscotch.net. We look
do.
at them and we do little dances.
We do.
We're like,
Yeah.
look at all these questions. Look at all these amazing questions.
But it does get exhausting because we also need to sort of like, you know, come up with a song for each question and a unique dance. And it, you know, so don't ask too many questions because it really eats into our day and gets exhausting. All this.
Yeah, try to find
singing and
a
dancing.
nice balance.
Yeah.
I mean, although we could all use the exercise.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, Seth doesn't need any more exercise, but
that's true.
I
I
certainly
hit,
do.
I'm done. I did it.
Yep.
You've done
I
it.
did all the
Accomplished.
You never need to
exercise.
exercise because you've gotten it all.
I did it.
But yeah, so go to podcast.bscotch.net, ask us some questions.
Give us some
and
exercise.
You can also find a podcast there as well as where to subscribe, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Everybody ready?
Wait. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. So there'll be some of these questions that we'll wait until Sam gets back
Mhm.
and we'll answer them next week or in 2 weeks. All right, first question comes from Oguz Who's. Agus Who's.
August. Wait, what's the kid from Willy Wonka?
Augustus Gloom.
Augustus Gloom.
Gloom. The greedy nincompoop. Okay. Oguz Who's the greedy nincompoops. We spend the first year of a child's life teaching it to walk and talk, and the rest of its life to shut up and sit down. Neil deGrasse Tyson. This is a quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Agreed.
Yeah, that's true. We do that.
We
What's
do.
going on with that?
Why do we do that?
It is fucked up. And this is something that we also talk about quite a bit is just how shitty our education system is.
Yeah,
When it comes to exactly this.
We're culturally trained to not be creative
Yeah.
and not think like progressively because you do exactly what we tell you to. And if you do anything that's different from that, you're going to go to detention.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think a lot of it comes down to our culture of reliance on standardized tests, which of course is you know, this is the kind of thing people talk about everywhere all the time. And everybody knows it's a problem, but nobody seems to have a good solution to it. But yeah, I mean, kids are very creative. They're very high energy. They like to ask a lot of questions. They like to create things and learn new things. And if you slam them into a desk and tell them to shut up and read a book for 8 hours a day
and just memorize things,
they're gonna have a bad time.
They're gonna stop drawing unicorns with 8 feet because you're like, that doesn't exist. You can't draw that.
But honestly,
unicorns only have 4 legs. But
Jesus.
Honestly, this is this is a direct parallel to the concept of crunch time in the games industry, where we all know that, especially if you're a programmer, that your mistakes cascade really dramatically into the future.
Yeah.
And if you are sleep deprived and you've been working 80 or 90 hour weeks and you are writing really bad code as a result, then you're going to have a really bad time, right? And so we all know this, and yet, particularly in the games industry, crunch time is a really big thing. So I think it's a direct parallel where we know what kids need, but we also know that we need them to take standardized tests. So we'll just strap them into their desks, make them take tests. Similarly, we know we need to get a game finished, and we also know it's bad for people to crunch, but we're going to crunch anyway.
I think this also parallels corporate America and corporate culture pretty frighteningly, because people are hired for their incredible resumes and their incredible ability to critically think during interviews. And then they're put into a cubicle. And if they have any good ideas, then they're silenced. They're shoved down. Like, you're given a promotion so that you can do really great new work for a company. I've heard this kind of story so many times.
You got an idea? Well, you know what? Send us a memo. We'll have a meeting on it in a couple months.
And then shoot it down. And then shoot it down. And then maybe see if we can get you fired because you're trying to change the company. And it's terrifying.
It's difficult. Life is hard. People suck sometimes.
Well, I think the other and from this quote, I've actually seen the talk that he gave, from which this quote comes, which is very inspirational.
Oh, for those who don't know, Neil deGrasse Tyson is an astrophysicist.
Yeah,
he did the series, the new Cosmos series, right?
He's one of Sagan's proteges.
Yeah. But he's actually, our stepdad went to high school with him.
What, really?
That's true. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
But he's very he's very inspirational about learning science, that kind of thing. But one of his big points with that quote in particular was also how we structure kids' lives so much so that thing, and also have tight control because of what we've decided to value, right? So the example he gives is like, if a kid drops an egg on the floor and it breaks and makes a mess, we get angry because they just made a mess, instead of celebrating the fact that they just did an experiment studying gravity. Right?
And what's inside of an egg.
And what's inside of an egg. It's a biology experiment.
And what happens when it gets in the carpet.
And this is actually, right, this is now an opportunity to understand like how to clean things, right? What happens when you clean stuff? Now you're dissolving things,
Yeah, acknowledging that mistakes are important.
Right, because that's how you learn about the world. So yeah, anyway, all I can really say,
there's a lot to unpack here, which we probably can't hit.
Let your kids break things if you got them. And if you are an adult, break things and just be okay with that fact.
This is why I let my cat poop on the floor sometimes.
Yeah.
This is why it's just your cat funneling creative energy out of its body.
Stinky creative energy.
We could segue neatly into another question by Darth Binary, who asks, what subject was your least favorite when you went to school? What would it be now?
Oh, wow. So interestingly, in school, my least favorite subjects were math and science.
Yep.
Because they were poorly taught and I wasn't encouraged. And when I made mistakes, I wasn't given a good way to actually, figure out why.
Yeah, you're just wrong.
Yeah, you're wrong. And
wrong.
I think also, we talked about this at the Women in Games panel at Pixel Pop, but a lot of teachers kind of subconsciously bias teaching toward male students.
Yes,
in math and science classes, and sort of let the female students continue to
kind of languish if they're having a hard time.
And so it wasn't until out of college, actually, that I discovered Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
And then you were like,
that
holy shit.
Yeah. I discovered the original Cosmos, chewed through it, and then just suddenly became fascinated by science.
Did you read any of his novels?
Yes. Well, not his novels. I read...
Or his, or whatever you would call them, I guess.
Books.
Novel's probably the wrong word. Books.
Yeah, his books. And he has this amazing one called The Varieties of Scientific Experience.
Yeah, it's real good.
Which is just all of his talks about religion and science and their overlap. And it's these kinds of things have helped really shape me as an adult, because as a child, I was raised in a kind of standard Midwestern upbringing, and that's being diplomatic. Bible Belt stuff.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older and discovered these really amazing ways of learning and these really amazing ways of viewing the cosmos and viewing science and viewing math and technology, I have really embraced it. And it's been
And you're like,
incredible.
wow, everything's so much cooler than everybody told me. It was.
Right. It really is too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
for me it was actually English, which is because I loved writing, and I had a creative writing class back in like I think 8th grade or something. Or actually, it wasn't even creative writing; it was just our literature class or something. But the teacher just all she ever had us do was just all this weird creative stuff, and so I would write this bizarre poetry and stuff that was like just because I thought it was really funny and entertaining, and I would get full credit for it because she also thought it was entertaining, even if it sort of defied the expectations of what she was trying to have us do.
Wait, that was your least favorite class?
That was my most.
Oh, okay. I was
So
like,
that was-
that sounds awesome. What are you
That was
talking-
my, but that was sort of like the peak of my experience with writing. And I thought I loved writing at that point, and then I went to high school, and all of a sudden, it turned out the rules now were that everything had to be a 5-paragraph essay. That was just that's how you write, I guess.
Yeah.
And then it had every paragraph has to start with a very clear, perfect introduction. And end with a
Intro
perfect
paragraph
conclusion.
that establishes 3 points. One paragraph
Exactly.
to expound
Per
on
point.
each of those 3
conclusion
points.
that just reiterates the points you made just 2 fucking seconds
Which,
ago.
spoiler alert, if you are in high school and you are doing 5-paragraph essays, they are literally not a thing that you do.
Yeah, the rest
once
of your
you're done
life,
with
you
high
will never
school.
do that again.
That kind of writing is exhausting to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that book?
It's like, well, it's like reading a bullet point list.
Yeah.
Basically.
Economical writing.
Economical Writing by
Yeah.
Deirdre McCloskey. Best book in the universe.
It's just like it explains this idea of this sort of classical approach to essay writing is just so unnecessarily lengthy
Yeah.
and loses your readers
Yeah.
rather than engaging them and explaining what you're about to write.
Right. And the focus at that time too for high school is like it needs to be exactly a 5-page paper, right? Or a 3-page. Actually, I guess at that time it was like 2 pages. Now, like, oh my god, this is so
not
many.
1.5,
Not
not
1.5.
7.
It's got to be exactly that number. So you have to somehow get your
Fluff
idea
it.
across. Yeah, exactly. It's always about fluffing it. And of course, then
Where
you go
else
to college.
in the universe
Yeah.
is this a thing?
And you go to college, and for the most part, that becomes less true unless you have shitty professors. But
I had
I mean, I also had
required
those.
7 to 10 page
Yeah, well,
essays.
and there's like, and for some but for us, most of my classes in college, now all of a sudden there was a maximum length, and there was no minimum, and I was like, seems weird. But then I started to get it as I got back into writing and realized what its purpose was, which is to communicate ideas really effectively. And now I find that writing is is absolutely my favorite and preferred way to communicate an idea, because you can sit down and carefully craft and recraft to get exactly the idea that you want to get across, but it only works when you get to use it to think and to come up with ideas instead of having it have sort of an additional structure on top that you're trying to fit these ideas inside of for no goddamn reason. So yeah, anyway, I found that experience was very frustrating and turned me off of writing really hard for a long time. And also literature just in general. Like I don't read literature at all,
So-
because I think mostly of those experiences I had. And
So
Yeah,
I
agreed.
also have a least favorite class, but I have an interesting observation to make after I say it, which is my least favorite course was actually my
this
freshman.
is like heard with purred.
Yeah, is my yes.
Here is my
Answer,
observation.
and my answer is going to be this. I took computer science my freshman year of college, and I've mentioned this in the past quite a bit because I think it's kind of ironic that now I'm a game programmer. But when I took computer science my freshman year, I hated it. I got a D-.
oh my God.
I don't know how I even did that because I was so depressed about the course that I didn't even go into the final.
Wow.
Like I was just sort of at my wit's end about it. And it was because I think, like, to me, programming, now that I know how to do it, programming is this just unbelievably cool problem solving tool that you can use to, do all kinds of amazing things. But it wasn't presented that way.
Yeah.
It was the very first thing that we talked about was memory pointers.
Mhm.
And like that was 2 weeks. I'm like, I don't know why. What is this? Why
You're
am I
learning
doing
it.
this?
You're learning computer science for the sake of computer science.
Yeah, we were learning it from the details up. So
Yeah.
it'd be kind of like, okay, we're going to learn about elephants. Let's start talking about like hydrogen atoms,
an elephant DNA.
Yeah. So it
Which
was
would be
just,
interesting,
there was
actually.
just literally there was no big picture. And the problems that we were solving in the course were actually more like highly technical problems trying to teach us these very fundamental, tiny things instead of doing things with programming that were, interesting and sort of evoked passion from people.
Yeah.
So of course now I'm a programmer, and I friggin' love it. And it was all because I self-taught through the process of making video games, which was like a much bigger picture, interesting thing to do.
It gives you purpose.
Yeah. What I think is cool about this is all three of us, our least favorite courses, we all turned around and it became something that we were all really passionate about later.
Yep.
I mean,
so
I
what
would
is
even-
that?
Yeah, I would like agree with you that it's about the framing, because I always struggled with my programming courses in college too.
Mhm.
And it kind of convinced me that, wow, this is just something that I'm never going to be good at.
I thought the same
And
thing.
so now when I make my own video games, I use these drag and drop programs because I understand and appreciate and love the methodology. But I've had this wall built between me and the syntax, me and the code, because I never felt like I could pick it up because of the way that it was framed in college.
Mhm.
And it's,
Which of course is ridiculous in retrospect.
right, absolutely, absolutely. And it's absolutely a matter of framing it in such a way that it feels purposeful, that it's not just, hey, okay, now we're going to write out hello world. Let's echo hello world. And that means nothing.
Well, let's make a variable called foo and another one called bar.
Bar.
What is
Yeah.
this? Why do they do
Like in what context will I ever use that? Why can't we start out by teaching the methodologies and teaching the value and teaching, these amazing things that we can do with these subjects? Like, we can learn about where we may have come from by studying the cosmos. We can learn how to communicate effectively and beautifully by studying English. We can learn to create worlds. We can learn to create like these
Yeah.
amazing pieces of software.
We got to focus on what it's for. Like,
Yeah.
why are we learning this stuff?
Yeah.
It's because it's freaking amazing and it's useful and it's going to make your life better and it's going to make you a better person to know how to do this stuff and to know about these things and,
And this
Hashtag
is-
disrupt education.
but yeah, you can't. But and it all really does come down to who is teaching it and how they teach it.
Well,
Yeah.
and also remember that teachers, especially before you get to college, are teaching stuff that they're required by law typically to teach according to the state that they're in, right? So now all of a sudden they can't teach Cosmos from the perspective of our origins, because now all of a sudden all these parents will get angry about
They've got a textbook
Big
and
Bang
a
doesn't
curriculum
exist and whatever. So you have to suddenly now politics are involved,
Mhm.
and suddenly
helicopter parents.
Suddenly there's
swooping
there's a test involved that if the students do poorly, now the school will get defunded. And now also there's a state established rubric of what you're supposed to teach.
That's the biggest
Yeah.
thing that
And
I've had
so-
friends who are teachers have said, like, I'm not allowed to actually write my own syllabi
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. So even if you are a good
What?
teacher, right?
Even if you are a good teacher, you're
You
not a
can't.
good teacher.
Yeah, but I
You
mean,
can't
but
be.
the origin of that kind of makes some sense, right? Which is that you want to make sure all kids get a good education, and there also are shitty teachers. So if you establish at least the minimum of what people need to be taught, then maybe that will work out okay. Of course, that's not actually
It's
what
like
happens.
it's like a 15 pieces of flair run amok situation. You have to teach this minimum, but you can't go above.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was sad.
But on a happier note, any topic that you didn't like, any subject that you didn't enjoy, there's an enormous amount to enjoy from it.
Mhm.
I promise.
You
I
just hit it.
guarantee.
You just hit it from the wrong angle.
hit it from the wrong
probably.
angle. And now in your, even if you're still a child listening to this, which you should.
Yeah.
but if
Go
you-
away, your child.
Your sweet little baby ears just heard the fuck word.
the fuck word.
It's not even the F word on this podcast.
It's just, we call it the fuck word. But as adults or kids today, because of the internet, you can now go learn anything.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and there's no longer a barrier. So if you always thought programming was too hard, if you thought math was too hard or boring or whatever, I promise you it's not, and you're wrong. And now you can just go to the
Wrong.
internet, and you can literally just go learn these things now. So yeah, we'll leave it at that.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I think it's amazing also that the internet gives you so many different ways to pursue it. It's
Yeah,
you find
right.
the way that's taught best for you.
But
and
be
that's what's
careful.
magical.
Because all that educational shit is also alongside regular shit.
Like Pepe the Frog.
Yeah. There's crap all over the internet. YouTube is the best way to learn stuff,
Mhm.
but it's also the best way to accidentally glance over at the sidebar and see recommended videos and like, look at this, blah, look at this ridiculous thing. And then you click on it and you're like, just one real quick.
Yeah, don't
then-
look at it.
And then you're done. I actually tried to find a Chrome extension that removes the YouTube sidebar. I couldn't find one.
You gonna make one?
We should start making productivity, the Butterscotch productivity suite.
The internet blaster that just like nukes parts of the internet so you can't see them.
Yeah, we should probably have that. And replaces every occurrence of a study shows with some people think.
Or
And
even
so-
a
Some
person
schmo.
thinks. Also, any headline that says something may be true, it should it should change it to may or may not.
Yeah.
Or something is probably false.
Yeah.
Something is more likely
Yeah.
false than true.
Chocolate may or may not reduce your risk of heart disease.
Although probably better if you just replaced every single headline with "This is clickbait" and just leave it at that.
There you go.
We want to tell it. We want to tell it how it is with our
Yeah.
Butterscotch productivity suite.
Is there a clickbait replacer? Because I want things to say like, you won't believe, blah. Just to replace that with,
You will believe this.
you're going to believe that
This isn't surprising at all.
This isn't surprising.
Come be unsurprised. All right. I got another kind of decent segue, I think.
Segway.
All right. So Kevin 888. We don't have any segues.
We should.
We should get an office segue. Kevin 888
As long as
asks,
we don't
We have a
drive it
lot
off
of
a cliff.
terrain to
Yes.
traverse in this
Too soon?
office. So.
too many of those St. Louis cliffs.
It was, it was sad, but it was also probably one of the most ironic deaths in
Mhm.
recent memory.
It's
It's
terrible.
the president of Segway went off a cliff on a Segway. Anyways,
That's a story for another time.
It's a story for The Onion,
for the onion.
but it's not actually for The Onion.
It's not, but
So Kevin 888 asks, or says and asks,
States.
the bros seem to have a similar style of writing and game design, but now that there are more people, will there be changes in the voice of Butterscotch games?
so this is interesting because actually we don't.
Yeah,
So
can confirm.
yeah. Sam's writing has a tendency to be a little bit more brief and punchy. Adam's writing tends to be very verbose and explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
because-
similar to mine.
Because Adam
Mhm.
assumes that people know nothing, and Sam assumes that people know more than they do.
Yeah.
I'm
Carol's somewhere
usually
in the middle.
yeah.
I'm usually somewhere in the middle, and I was
Yeah.
also a writing tutor in college, so I tend to be a lot more detail oriented on grammar and structure.
Yeah.
But because, and then of course, yeah, Carol is probably closer to Adam.
I like details.
Mhm.
Yeah. But what I think is interesting is that there's the perception probably that we have a similar writing style or whatever, but it's actually because we just do we give a lot of feedback, right?
Yeah,
So
we
we
do co-write.
pass writing around back and forth, and if somebody writes something up, then when they get it to a state where they think it's good and ready to go, then they hand it off to somebody else, and that person's like, this is not good, I'm ready
Yeah.
to go.
Redo.
Yeah,
Well-
because we all have different perspectives and we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and by, helping each other with feedback, then we can, find the holes in the writing.
Exactly. So naturally, there will be an evolution to the writing style
Yep.
as we add more people who will be providing feedback and co-writing. But what's been really interesting for me is that coming in, we had a very established Butterscotch voice,
Mm-hmm.
right? That we all knew, we all understood. Everything is going to be funny. Everything is entertainment. We don't send anything out that's dry. And that was a huge challenge for me because I was raised by an editor of Prentice Hall educational books, and that's just like as dry as it gets. So I was taught technical writing,
Get these jokes out of here.
yeah. And
Yep.
so I've actually had to study stand-up comedy and comedy writing and really sit down in front of these comedy shows and write down why I laughed, why I didn't laugh, why I got upset, and start bringing that into my
It's
writing.
kind of a
here
weird
at
thing to do,
Butterscotch.
but it makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And it was really amazing to hear Sam hear from one of his friends that that newsletter that we sent out a couple weeks ago. I was the one who originally wrote that. Then we co-wrote it together,
Mhm.
revising it. And she was like, she couldn't believe that I was the one who originally wrote it because it was so much in the Butterscotch voice.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
exactly.
so it's
it.
weird because none of us actually has that voice.
Right. No, it's
It's
a very
a-
difficult voice to have.
it's the consequence of collaboration.
Yeah, it's a conglomerate.
Well, and it's that we're all working towards the same goal, right? Which is, as Carol said, is to make these entertainment products. And so to us, that means kind of a specific set of things that could give the vibe that we're trying to provide for the studio. Because we want it to be a fun, entertaining place where you just get to laugh and feel like you've had a moment of glee and get to forget about the other things that are happening in your life.
I think another kind of cool thing about this idea is that it sort of illustrates some kind of fundamental thing about the way we operate as a studio, which is no individual person really has 100% ownership of anything, right? Because we do offer a lot of feedback on things, and we give stuff to other people to edit and proofread, and even for me, when I'm the code that I write in the games is all my code, but I'm constantly presenting what I've created to people in the studio and saying, hey, is this working the way that it should? And if not, what can we change?
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, and we've talked about this in the past, but when we look at something like Crashlands or Quadrupus or whatever, none of us feels like we made it.
Yeah.
Because
it's a collaborative.
Because effort. There's not any individual thing that any of us can point at and say that was all me, right? Because it's all just a group effort.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
And it is the case that we do, and actually this leads into the next question as well.
So
this
many
is going
segues.
really well.
Segue.
But this, I mean, part of this is that we do all have sort of primary roles, right? Which is more that we have responsibility for a thing than we have ownership of that thing. Meaning that
the buck stops at you.
Yeah, exactly. So it sets responsibility to make sure that if he's doing things that he enlists the help of other people for debugging. And if he puts out a game that's broken, that is his fault now, right? Because he didn't go through the steps necessary to get all of us to collaborate to make sure that the thing worked. Same deal if one of us sends out a newsletter. If I pull the trigger on something since I'm doing all the Butterscotch ID stuff, if I draft up some part of Butterscotch ID really quick and then just send it out without showing it to anybody, and then it offends somebody or doesn't work or whatever, that's now my fault, right? So we do have primary responsibilities that we need to make sure actually happen. So we make things come to fruition, right? But we don't do that in a vacuum at all.
Exactly. It's fun.
It's good.
It is good.
But you also have to be, there's an idea that we always tell people, which is, you have to separate your sense of self from the things that you create, right?
Yeah.
Because if you take it as a personal attack, anytime somebody looks at a thing you made and is like, this isn't as good as it could be, then that's where you can't take feedback all of a sudden. Like you can't improve the thing that you made because you can't acknowledge that it needs improvement without being hurt.
Which is an unnatural mindset. I mean,
it is actually
for, it's human nature to feel proud of what you do. And then if somebody says this isn't good enough, then you're like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot of adjustment, and it's been, I know it's been an adjustment period for me. I don't know about the other guys, but it's still ultimately, that the product that you are putting out as a group is way better than any product that you could put out as an individual. And so it's that reminder of, okay, I know that this feedback is for the sake of improvement and exclusively for improvement, not for insult.
And it takes practice thinking about that before you truly believe it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that the person is criticizing the thing you made, not just to cut you down,
right?
But to help you improve. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So everybody listening, practice taking feedback for what it is.
Yeah.
But this does nicely lead to the next question, also by Kevin888.
Way to go, Kevin!
He's crushing it right now. Will there ever be a time when one person takes a lead on a project? For example, would it be possible for Carol or Andy to lead a project and make their dream game? To me, this has two kind of interesting things that I want to talk about, because one is the concept of making your dream game. But the first one, I think we really already discussed, right? Which is everybody is taking a lead on something, right? And Andy and Shure right now are probably taking the fewest leads on stuff because they're still just mostly training. But eventually they will take leads on something. But that means the same thing it does
in
for
any
the rest of us right now. Yeah, it means that the buck will stop with them on something, right?
Yeah.
But they won't be just universally in charge of directing a thing, I guess.
Yeah. I remember when we were first chatting about doing Quadrupus Remastered, it was all studio.
Yeah.
An all studio discussion of us all just chatting about our ideas and chatting about, what would fit and what, could be really cool. And it was a really amazing experience to just be with, these 6 people all tossing out ideas and feeling like every idea was valid. So yeah, I would agree with that anytime we've even, I've mentioned we pivot every week or whatever. But every time we've had, a new game idea in the works, it's always felt like everyone's idea is validated on that.
Exactly. And we have talked about Crashlands as being Sam's dream game. Like we have used that phrasing. But what's interesting about it is it in its current form and what it turned out to be, that was not what Sam envisioned. Right. Actually,
nothing like it, really.
Yeah. It was basically, it wasn't like he had this exact vision of a dream game that he wanted to make. He just was very passionate about the idea of basically making an open world crafting game that had some elements from some other stuff that he liked.
Where you were a vacuum that went around picking up leaves.
Right. And so it wasn't that he had a very specific dream game that he was sort of, cracking the whip over Adam and me and making us, execute his idea. It was more like, I have this thing that I think would be cool to try. Let's figure out how to make it go. Yeah. And of course it evolved over 2 years and it changed basically every week. And then it just became what it is.
And I think this is important because it's this whole concept of ownership and making your dream game and so on. I think this is a trap that so many small indie devs fall into when they go off to make games, because they do it because they love games and they want to they have this vision in their mind of the thing that they want to make that is the their dream game, right? And as soon as they do that, then now all of a sudden they need to enlist people who will buy into their vision, their specific vision,
instead of just wanting to work on something awesome.
Exactly, instead of wanting to collaborate on something awesome. And so
it makes everybody else subservient to your idea of what's the best.
And to me, this actually seems to be what most people think they want when they think they want to be a game developer, is that they want to, because they all want to be a game designer.
They want a team of people who will make their ideas real.
Right.
Yeah.
Similarly, when you come in with that dream game idea of like, this is the game that I want, I feel like that also makes you less inclined to be willing to give it up if it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Or, you know, to make adjustments to it.
Or coming back to the feedback idea, if somebody says this is not good,
they've just crushed your dream.
Yeah. I mean, they're not just talking about a thing that you made. They're talking about, they're literally saying that your dreams aren't good. Right. Which is, it's a very dangerous mindset to get into. Actually, it's very difficult to work with. Yeah.
But that said, I work on little tiny dream games on my own all the time. There's nothing to say that if there's a project that you want to work on, you can't work on it.
Yeah.
No, nothing at all. And that's something that you should probably do exactly that way on your own, right?
Yeah, hobbyist style.
Yeah, it's for you. If you're making a dream game, that thing is for you, right? That's not for other people. That is not a product. That's not a thing. It might turn into one, depending on how things go. But if your purpose is to make a thing because it's your dream, then that thing is for you. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Right.
But if you're going to try to turn that into a product,
you're trying to make other people make it,
either make it or buy it. Yeah, either way, you're going to be in for a very rough time. And the vast majority of times that doesn't work out. Every once in a while, some amazing, cool, weird thing comes out of that people get into. Or that people will buy into to help you make.
But it's a difficult road.
Rare. Yeah.
Yeah. I would guess maybe something like Stardew Valley probably falls into that.
It was made by one person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of the really successful indie games that you'll see out there that were tiny teams, it's like this super successful dream game that is one in thousands.
Yep.
That was marketed really well and made really well. And, you know, a lot of times when people think about making their dream game, they're not thinking about how to market it. Yeah. They're thinking about how can I make this?
Yeah. Right. Well, and it also reminds me of the GDC talk on Antichamber, which was solo dev, and he worked on the game for 7 years, and it was similar in the sense that, you know, this was something that he was really passionate about, you know, making this thing come to life, and this just mind-bending first-person puzzle game. But he was crushed by it. I mean, trying to make this thing happen because he sort of got, sort of emotionally enslaved by the idea of making this thing come to life. And he just had he even giving the talk, he kind of broke down, you know, just talking about the experience of making this game.
Yeah,
so
it's an emotional process.
It's hard. So
yeah.
Anyway,
any more segues, Adam?
Dream games.
I actually don't. So now I need to do a pivot.
Oh, pivot.
So here's my pivot. Here's my pivot question.
Pivot time in the question talks.
This comes from Roxton, who asks, how do you type with those boxing gloves on?
Beleated.
Del Taco.
Beleated.
All right, so that was a good segue. So now let's go with this question. I like this one. Who is your favorite antagonist in a video game and why? This is from Dormouse85. Not just boss fight, but a villain present throughout the game.
Oh, man.
Oh, Sin from Final Fantasy X.
Nice.
You guys played Final Fantasy X?
Nope.
Sin is just basically this enormous monster that is destroying cities and stuff. And it seems that the goal of the game as you're progressing through is to defeat this thing. And every now and then you will, you know, go to a city, and then all of a sudden, you know, this like tsunami comes in because this huge sea creature is like coming in to devour everything. And it's very terrifying. It's one of the best horrifying villains I've ever seen in a game. And there's some super sweet spoilers at the end, but you know, I'm not going to ruin it. The game's been out for like 14 years or something.
But it takes a long time to play.
So. But it recently came to Steam. So,
oh, wow.
You know, yeah. Right.
And it's easily one of my favorite games of all time. So Final Fantasy X. Check it out.
I've never played many Final Fantasy games.
I haven't played any of them.
I've played 2 of them. And
people love
10
those
was 10 was my favorite Final Fantasy game of the 2 that I played. So
I think my favorite villains are, what's the guy's name from Borderlands 2? Was it Jack?
Handsome
Jack.
Handsome
Jack. And similarly, GLaDOS from Portal. Yeah. Because they're both clearly evil villains, but in a really entertaining, amusing way that also gives them just so much character, and they're so fun to be involved with and to have
GLaDOS
as an antagonist.
GLaDOS is easily mine.
She's good.
And okay, so here's the thing. It's not really a specific villain, but probably the most affected I've been by a video game antagonist was in Fatal Frame 2. Just the overall spiritual dread.
Fatal Frame.
Fatal Frame 2. I don't like horror games. It's the only horror game that I've ever actually spent an extraordinary amount of time with. But it's a Japanese video game where you have to take pictures of ghosts to capture their souls, and like just the overall level of horror and dread throughout that game. That's just like literally dripping from the walls. There's blood dripping out of the walls. There's like skin of humans everywhere. So like I would say I guess the environment of Fatal Frame 2 was the best antagonist, the best video game antagonist that I feel like ever experienced.
That's true though. I mean, in a horror game, the environment should be the villain.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
on some level.
Yeah.
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 And similarly, have either of you guys played? This is it's October horror game talk. I'm turning this into spooky. The Eternal Darkness for GameCube was the first fourth wall breaking video game I think that I had ever heard of. And they actually used, in order to increase that level of horror and that level of just like, what the hell is even happening? They actually made it seem like the system, like your game system was broken, or like the game had restarted itself, or
like there's a ghost in your GameCube.
Yeah, or there's like a glitch that's like pushing you, like it's squishing the screen farther and farther and farther. And so you actually have an insanity meter, and the higher your insanity meter gets, the more fucked up the game becomes on a fourth wall breaking level.
Huh.
And so, like,
that's cool.
Similarly, antagonist of your own sanity.
Wow.
Is pretty amazing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wish I had a GameCube now.
Yeah.
To check that out.
Yeah. They're
Maybe
probably
someday.
like $20.
Yeah,
I have a copy of the game if you ever want to borrow it.
Nice.
I might actually have one at home now that I think about it.
GameCube?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I think Jenny had one.
Nice.
Maybe.
I will loan you this game. I had
Sweet.
it in college. I had an Eternal Darkness Until Dawn party where we just stayed up all night playing Eternal Darkness. It was scary.
Nice. sounds Halloween-y.
It was.
Halloween-y. All right, I think we can throw one more question in here.
We can. Maybe
so
even 6 if we're quick about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna pivot again since we're talking about Halloween and spookiness. I guess this isn't really a pivot. This is a segue. Yeah.
Segue or pivot.
So Hawksrock 250. I don't know why I can't say this. Hawksrock 250 says, hear about the supposed clown attacks? Is it real or fake? Or is it just Adam running around in his Halloween suit?
It's Adam.
I promise it's not me. Pinky swear.
I know we've been saying that we've been going to a bunch of conventions and traveling around, but really.
No, really we have been, and it has not just been me dressing as a clown.
Totally, me neither.
And terrifying people.
I also haven't.
Neither of us have been doing this even a little bit, promise.
I'm glad we put that to bed.
Good work.
All right, next question.
I don't actually know much about this thing.
I haven't been paying attention.
Has anybody been paying attention?
It seems absurd.
Yeah.
Apparently it's
probably
just
real.
A bunch of creepy clown people going around and just standing and staring at people. So cops have been apparently kind of discriminating against clowns in public and just kind of automatically arresting them anytime they see them, because this has become this weird phenomenon. And probably I think the most, and I could be totally wrong, but I think the most law-breaking thing that has actually been reported is that people have been voyeuristic and like actually staring into people's homes in a creepy way. But I think the concern is that there's going to be kidnappings and assaults and things like that.
But probably what it really is just a whole bunch of Redditors.
Yeah, I think it's
We
there's
thought
a
this would be
subreddit.
hilarious. I'm sure there's a subreddit somewhere. This can be private, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I bet there's a private being a creepy clown
Being a
subreddit.
cre-
r/being a creepy clown where they just come up
Creepy
with
clown
ideas for how to fucking creep people out.
Yep.
I mean, it just sounds like exactly the kind of thing I imagine high school boys would do today, right?
Yeah. When it's also the kind of thing that's going to culminate in somebody dying.
Yeah, some clown's gonna get shot. It's gonna
Unless
turn out
that's
to be a
already happened. Has it
15-year-old
already
honor
happened?
student.
You just thought it would be funny prank. It's just a
Yeah.
prank, bro.
Just prank.
I just got a machete and dressed like a clown and stood in the woods near your house. Just a prank. Bro.
There's a really Patton Oswalt has an old stand-up comedy special where he talks about a clown that comes to his daughter's birthday party, and he's just like not even trying. He just has a clown nose on, and I guess that's it or something like that. And he comes walking out of the woods into this park. For whatever reason, he comes from the woods and just like saunters up, and just instead of making balloon animals, he just makes long balloons and gives them to them and says, look, it's a sword.
Shittiest clown ever.
Exactly. And so I feel like that's probably what's happening is just people are too lazy to actually be clowns. So they're just walking out of the woods and just standing there and staring at you.
So if you're one of those people,
clowning is hard. You
Yeah.
know, it's a tough profession. So
yeah,
I'm not being sarcastic. It probably is actually a very difficult profession to be a clown.
most professions are if you
Yeah.
do them well.
Yeah.
I know a former clown, actually.
Former clown.
She left clowning to actually dye yarn.
It's an
I mean, that's a pretty natural
unexpected
career trajectory.
She now has a very successful yarn business.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
we've all been there. That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you are dressing up as a clown and scaring the fuck out of people, just quit it.
Just don't
For every reason in the universe, quit it. But also probably going to get shot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for your
Or
own
arrested.
sake, as well as the rest of our sakes, just
because this is America, and the only way to stop a clown is with a gun.
Hey, cut it out.
But that means we need some good clowns.
Cut.
Cut it out. Never mind.
I don't get it.
I don't get
It's
it.
a Full House reference. Oh my God.
Full House.
I'm sorry for my transgressions.
Somebody probably got it listening. Probably.
Good job, whoever got that.
If you got it, go to podcast.bscotch.net to validate my humor.
Tell Carol she's hilarious at podcast.bscotch.net.
Hey, cut it out.
No, but do it though.
No, do it. You do it. Yeah.
Don't cut it. Actually, go do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're probably done here. I think.
I think we nailed it. Good job, folks.
So this episode, we're all obviously very tired. I think we had a nice chat, and I promise that in a couple weeks we're gonna try to spice it up some more.
We're going to come roaring back
Yeah.
to the microphone in a ball of fury.
We're gonna dip. We're gonna
Ball of
dip the
excitement.
next podcast in a bucket of salsa.
Yeah. It's gonna burn your.
And then we're gonna dip the other end of it in some guac.
Ooh. Oh, that sounds really good.
Yeah,
It's gonna be.
Let's
It means it's
do
gonna be
that.
great.
gonna be
So
really-
please follow us
Yep.
on Twitter.
Do it.
Subscribe to our
Do that also.
podcast. We're on iTunes. We are on Stitcher and SoundCloud.
And Google Play
And Google Play
podcast services.
Goog boo.
Go find us on all the things. And again, go to podcast.bscotch.net to ask us questions and tell Carol that she's hilarious.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.